Hello and welcome to Honest Explained. Today we're going to talk about what happened yesterday. Yesterday being February 6th, 2026. Yes, the big news was that Trump posted yet another racist meme. I don't want to dive into that. It was, portraying former President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes, if you will. Horrible, racist, disgusting, not something that anybody should share, let alone the President of the United States. But behind that PR move that made all of us discuss this, right? The world discussed him posting it, then discussed him removing it, then discussed him blaming some type of staffer for posting it. But behind all that, President Trump signed 4 executive orders and 1 proclamation. And so today we're going to focus on what happened there because this is very important to discuss. So hence, we're talking about what Trump did in one day and why it matters. So February 6, 2026, President Trump signed, as I mentioned, 5 major EOs and 1 presidential proclamation spanning immigration, arms exports, Iran, Russia-India trade, and Atlantic fishing rights. Taking individually, right? Those are very different. But if you think about them as one unit, they start to make sense. They also show us how things are being done. They're also cementing weaponization of things such as trade and tariffs and rules and climate, by the way, and safety. So this Honest Explained breaks down what happened, why it happened now, and what the consequences are legally, economically, and of course, geopolitically. So what happened? 5 actions, one by one. First, criminal records plus immigration screening. The first executive order directs the Department of Justice to give the Department of Homeland Security access to the maximum extent permitted by law, which does the heavy duty here, to federal criminal history record information for immigration screening and vetting. That's not all. It also authorizes DHS to exchange felony conviction records with visa waiver programs countries with serious crime prevention agreements, and other trusted allies. Now, the exchange must be reciprocal, conducted under formal agreements, and include privacy safeguards. On paper, it looks like better screening, better data, stronger border security, but in practice, a significant expansion of how criminal justice data is used in immigration decisions and who gets access to it. So, you were driving a car too fast in, Germany. Shall that be used to deport you back to Germany if you live in the United States, and vice versa, right? So, second, America First arms transfer strategy. The second executive order establishes a sweeping America First arms transfer strategy, reframing U.S. weapons sales as a foreign policy tool, an industrial policy tool, and a leverage mechanism over allies. So we weaponize tariffs and trade. Now we're weaponizing military aid. That, by the way, if you zoom out a little bit, for 80 years after World War II, US told Europe, rely on us. You guys keep fighting each other, so rely on us. We're going to sell you stuff. We're going to put our bases here. Let's create NATO. Let's create UN. We all going to, work together. And I will be that safety partner, right? That will handle all you fighting kids on the block, right? And I will ensure there is stability. 80 years later, US weaponizes it. You want stability? What am I getting for it? And I'm going to decide, am I going to give you stability or none of you? And I'm going to go with Russia. President Zelensky today shared that there is Ukrainian intelligence reports that tells us that Russia and US are discussing a deal worth of trillions of dollars, which, if you think about Ukraine, with no infrastructure to get minerals, that, of course, all of this will be packaged as we need those critical minerals. that rare earth, right, to be less dependent on China. But Ukraine doesn't have that infrastructure to get that minerals or rare earth or whatever. Also, they're discussing the land that is actually Ukrainian but should be managed by Russia. Which leads that whole trillions worth of whatever deal to force Ukraine by June, July to literally sign off Crimea and Donbass. And Kiev today said this is a no-go. Now, those trillions of dollars, this is my way of thinking. Does this include some bogus idea of Greenland or Alaska? Or end? Drill, baby, drill. Are we going to, right? Altogether, US is aligning more closer to Russia, right? And so using the trade and military aid for Europe that learned to rely on US as a way to manipulate it. And this is cemented in this executive order here. The order instructs the administration to prioritize arms sales that serve US strategic interests. Use foreign purchases and capital to expand US production capacity. Reward partners that invest in their own defense and align, this is very important here, and align with US security priorities. Streamline approvals, monitoring, and congressional notifications. And now again, let's zoom out. You signed an agreement today to get F-35s. Canada did it. Right now they're looking at this deal and hopefully investigating and seeing what other options are there. But altogether, you signed the deal. Between the time that you agreed upon something and the delivery, there's years apart, right? Within those years, will Trump administration change the course and question how many times and where to? Quite recently, Japan complained that they never got something that they paid for under Biden administration. Where is it, right? Was it sold somewhere else, right? That's an example. So, and I'm not saying that nobody should buy from US. Please do your research and do what's best for you. Same as US does what's best for us. To each their own, and everybody has the right to it. But when we see an executive order cementing this as a tool to manipulate, we have to state the obvious. So, agencies are given 60 to 120 days to produce a prioritized weapons sales catalog, a coordinated industry engagement plan, streamlined oversight, and reporting metrics. This is not about selling more weapons indiscriminately. It's about deciding who gets access and on what terms. Third executive order is about Iran. Tariffs as global enforcement tool. The third executive order targets Iran, but not only Iran. It actually targets everybody who sells Iran oil or anything directly or indirectly. And in return, US would be imposing something like 25% tariffs. Again, imports from any country that directly or indirectly purchases goods or services from Iran or sells to Iran, or either. Commerce determines whether a country is buying from Iran. State Treasury, DHS, USTR advise on penalties. The president decides whether tariffs are imposed and at what level. Let's pause here. A week ago, President Trump was talking about penalizing anybody who buys oil from Iran, directly or indirectly. Think about shadow fleet. He also talked about, if anything, what they buy, what they sell to Iran, or if they have any type of business dealings with Iran. This is not pictured here in this order. This specifically focuses on who buys oil from Iran directly, indirectly. Okay. Commerce determines whether a country is buying from Iran, as I mentioned, and then others decide on penalties, but then only the president decides on what level those penalties will be. This transforms sanctions logic into trade enforcement. Instead of punishing Iran alone, the order pressures Iran trading partners, turning access to US market into compliance test. Same story as we see progressing from the military aid as well. Russia, India, tariffs removed as reward. The fourth executive order removes the previously imposed 25 tariff on Indian imports, citing that India has committed to stopping imports from Russian oil, but increased buying from China, okay, agreed to purchase US energy, expanded long-term defense cooperation with the United States. Agreed to purchase US energy. Agreed does a very big job here. The tariff removal takes effect immediately with refunds processed where applicable. But the order also includes monitoring provisions. If India resumes buying from Russia, the tariffs are back on the table. Now, we also have to state here, I wrote an article yesterday about the new deal between India and US. After a year, the tariffs are down from 25% to 18%. This 25% here was in addition. Okay, so Atlantic, no, the fifth one is the presidential proclamation, right? And it talks about Atlantic fishing, lifting environmental restrictions imposed by the Biden administration. It's revoking Biden era ban on commercial fishing in the Northeast Canyons and Seamounts Marine National Monument, roughly 4,913 square miles in the Atlantic. The administration argues that fish stocks are already protected under existing federal laws. Species are migrating and not unique to monument. Did they think it's a monument? Categorical bans are unnecessary and economically harmful. The result, commercial fishing is once again permitted under existing regulatory frameworks over the objections of coastal communities and scientists who warn the move risks long-term ecological damage, a move that is expected to face legal challenges over environmental protections and executive authority. Now, let's focus here why it all happened and why it happened now and why you were so busy given the insult that was publicly there from morning on. This was not coincidence, it was coordination. It's not chaos, right? Every chaos has a method. There's a method to the madness. Across all 5 actions, the same governing logic appears. Security framing plus economic leverage plus administrative speed. Different tools, same philosophy. First, security is the justification. As much as what we witnessed on April 1st, or what is it, 2nd last year. We all say, well, what White House says, it's all in the light of national security. National security matters. That's why I'm going to use this and I'm going to use that. Supreme Court is still dragging its feet to decide, shall the president use tariffs as a weapon? But since there is no decision, we're going with it. We're rolling with it. Now, each action is explicitly framed as protecting national security, public safety, economic resilience. Whether it's immigration data, arms exports, Iran, Russia, fishing grounds, security is the legal and political anchor. Markets are also the leverage here. Instead of relying primarily on diplomacy or legislation, these actions use tariffs, access to U.S. markets, access to U.S. weapons, access to U.S. regulatory permission. Compliance is rewarded. Misalignment is penalized. Speed matters more than consensus, right? All 5 actions rely on executive authority, existing emergency declarations, and delegated agency power to the decision maker being the president. Congress is informed, not centered, not, approving anything, discussing anything, is being informed that, okay, this and this happened. Courts become the backstop, not the starting point. This is governance optimized for velocity. Think about it again. The real consequences, allies are now graded, not just partnered. As I mentioned, 80 years ago, we were partnering, we were working towards democracy and peace and stability, and now we are ranking them on how much they do for us. Defense cooperation, energy alignment, and trade behavior are increasingly bundled together. Countries are no longer just allies, they're risk-weighted participants in U.S. strategy. Good behavior brings access, bad behavior brings tariffs, delays, or exclusion. Trade becomes a sanction substitute. The Iran order is especially consequential. By threatening tariffs on third countries, the U.S. is effectively saying, if sanctions don't change behavior, market access will. This raises retaliation risks. Obviously, WTO, World Trade Organization, is going to have questions. Enforcement disputes over what counts as indirect trade. Again, and they say, well, Department of Justice looks it up, the Department of Trade decides, and then ultimately president approves to what level this retaliation will be. Now, industrial policy is now explicit. The arms transfer strategy removes an ambiguity. US weapons sales are meant to rebuild domestic capacity, not just supply allies. Not something that we designed and agreed upon 80 years ago. The foreign demand is treated as capital injection, production accelerator, and geopolitical filter. This reshapes how allies plan procurement and how US industry prioritizes output. Also, environmental and regulatory protections are conditional. The fishing proclamation shows that domestic side of the same logic of protection is seen as redundant or restrictive. In short, it doesn't bring us money, we'll get it out, right? Get out with that. The bottom line, what happened on February 6th was not five disconnected actions. It's one governing message delivered across multiple fronts. Security justifies speed, markets enforce alignment, access is rewarded, executive power is the engine. Whether the strategy proves effective or destabilizing will depend on implementation, of course, legal challenges, and, well, the global response. How will allies respond? We see, I just literally recorded the deep dive for our Onest members. Chancellor Merz traveled to the Gulf, made agreements there. We see Prime Minister Carney of Canada traveling to the Gulf, traveling to Canada. We see UK Prime Minister Starmer traveling to UK. I did the deep dives. I recorded videos on that. Please watch it. Everybody is shifting. I always say it as a joke, girls gotta eat, but it's true because this is not chaos. There's strategy behind it. There's also, quite frankly, continuation of steps behind it as well. And so we'll see how will the global community respond, but the direction is clear. This is not transactional chaos, it's transactional governance, structured, conditional, and deliberately centralized. And now it is in motion. Again, thank you for watching Onest Explained. I want to remind you that on honestnetwork.com, you have all of this in writing. The middle article, that's the one I just delivered here. Either, talking about Trump RX, what is it? Also, we have election in Japan tomorrow. What's about that? Updates from World Health Organization. Remember this one? And other also visits, EU going to India and as well. So see what's out there. Please consume actual news on Onest Network. We have no ads. Nobody's tracking your data. Nobody is looking into you, recording anything. It's a very safe space to find real, actual information, legal information. So we're also moving Onest Network to European servers. Nothing changes for you. It's more on us to provide more safer environment. Given everything that's happening, I think it's a good idea. Now, thank you so much for being here. See you back on Onest Explained, and thank you for supporting this work and independent journalism. See you.